say start with reading, reading, reading. Because what we miss out in experiences, we can learn from reading others' experiences. Of course, case laws help, but it doesn't always have to be case laws. There are wonderful books written on IP in a story form, such as Rembrandt's in the Attic. There are people's master's thesis, PhD thesis. You don't have to read the whole thing, even if you can read one portion of it in any order, it doesn't matter. Just read.
Hello, everyone. We are here today at Super Lawyer YouTube channel again with Advocate Shalini Sitaraman Menenzes. And I have been her fan and I have been following her on LinkedIn for a couple of years now. The work she has been doing, it's very empowering, not only for IP lawyers or patent lawyers, patent attorneys, but for women as well. She started her own organization, I would say, and I would let her speak about it in a bit. Welcome, ma'am. Please tell us, when did you decide to do law? What was your motivation? And that too after an interesting and intriguing field for me, biophysics. How did you convert from biophysicist to a lawyer?
I watched Legally Blonde. That's the short story. So the goal never was to be a lawyer. The goal was always to be a physicist. I was to do my PhD in physicist and physics and become a physics professor and teach physics. But the first day in my lab in the US, I got admission in Ohio State University and I went there to study. And the first day in the lab, my advisor's research was stolen by his friend. He had divulged it to his friend without applying for a patent, without publishing it. He had shared it, and his friend filed for a patent and also got it published in a science magazine. And that was my first brush with this world of intellectual property, patents. I started Googling it. At that time, Google wasn't there. We had Ask Jeeves. It's that long ago. And I started looking up, trying to see. And then I realized, okay, as a physicist, I can study patent law or file patents. Patent law also wasn't in the picture. It was, I can file patents. Okay. Then I started looking around for what is needed to file a patent. Then I realized intellectual property law. But at that time, there was no one in the world who was offering intellectual property law at a bachelor's level. It was always one subject in the master's level. And I didn't want to do one paper in the master's level. I felt that there is so much more that I could do in this field. So I graduated with a master's, second master's in biophysics. And then I was teaching, I was faculty at a college for a while. And then I found out that IIT Kharagpur was starting 3-year LLB in IPR, and you had to have a master's in pure science for that. I quit my job at the end of the year and I moved back to India and traveled around for a bit and then joined IIT for their 3-year IP law. And I was fascinated with every aspect of law. Some of my professors thought I could make it as a constitutional lawyer. I should join the judiciary. There were all these expectations, but in the end, I kept coming back to intellectual property. But I still read all those groundbreaking cases, Maneka Gandhi and Keshavananda Bharti. I read them cover to cover. So I found something that I never knew I would enjoy and appreciate. I found that in law.
Wow. I feel like that the person who was already doing her second master's, how much strength you had to come back and do a bachelor's again. And it's commendable the way you have done it. So during doing that and becoming the founding partner, founding person of India's first patent aggregator platform, where did that motivation come from? Because for a lawyer, your motivation was what you shared with us. So what motivated you to establish this kind of comprehensive platform, especially for patent listing, sales, valuation, and acquisitions?
So at some point, when I started filing, I got my law degree. I went back to the US for a while and then I came back and I set up my own practice. I called it SimSim Advisory for Open SimSim, Khulja SimSim. And I had SimSim Advisory. We used to file patents, trademarks, copyrights, awareness sessions, education sessions. But then after a few years, when the patents started getting granted, people started coming back to me and said, now what do we do with this? Where do we go? And I started looking around. The year I joined law school was the year Ocean Tomo had opened up. And Ocean Tomo is this company in Chicago, for those who are not aware of it. They call themselves an investment bank, BANQ. And I know they do valuation, but they also do monetization, commercialization, IP auctions, and so on. And 2006, when I started my journey in IP law, was when Ocean Tomos was started. Again, in those days, there wasn't so much available on the internet. So I started following their trajectory, and I kept telling all my classmates, the ones with whom I have a bond, let's start something like this. Let's start something like this. And they always said, we don't know enough, so we can't start anything. And I said, we can learn along the way, but nobody wanted to experiment with something new. So it went on the back burner in the middle of IIT. I also had a baby, which I brought back to campus, and I smuggled inside the hostel, and all sorts of crazy things happened. And then when my clients started saying, where do we go with these patents? Then I said, "Theek hai, chalo, let's start valuation and let's start this platform." So I started talking to companies, to people who would make those decisions about acquiring R&D or acquiring patents in companies. And I asked around for what is needed and so on. And I think the first need was a valuation, independent valuation firm. So I started that. And of course, we have a patent aggregator platform, like you mentioned, and we list patents. We also have some special patents that we don't list there because people just want a secret, want to keep it that way. Although patents are already in the public domain, but they don't want to be known as being advertised and so on. So that also happens. And it was quite an interesting journey where it's been there. The seeds were sown from the first year of my studies in law, but it took 14, 15 years for it to come into practice.
But since you were passionate, it came into practice and you made it a reality. At least it's very helpful for the people who really want to go for valuation and understand how patents work. And definitely, after the grant, what should we do is the most important question, which should have been answered earlier, but now your company is already doing it. So, keeping in mind your technical background in obviously physics and biophysics, how do you see this particular interdisciplinary expertise of yours as a physicist has helped you get acquainted with patents more and has helped you get better clients? Have you faced any challenges first? And if you have faced challenges, how have you tackled it as a technical expert? How did you start getting clients? What kind of focus was there that you get client as an individual practitioner or as a consultant?
So when I started in Goa in 2015, there was no IP lawyer in Goa. People used to go to Bombay and Bangalore and Pune for all their IP needs. So a lot of time went into raising awareness, conducting sessions, speaking at colleges, speaking at the Chamber of Commerce, speaking at universities. I practically have raised my clients from scratch. Planted the seeds of IP, and they have come back a year or two later or 5 years later and said, okay, we want to file something. And so now we have quite a rich portfolio from Goa as a smallest state, as you know. We have quite a rich portfolio for it being the smallest state if you look up the IP India website. So we have trademarks, we have copyrights, we have designs and patents, of course. The challenge is not in the technical part. The challenge is always in the business side of things, in the people part, because technology is technology. Physics is very cut and dry. Biophysics is cut and dry. I mean, if you know maths, you know your equations, physics is sorted. If you know which section, which act, rule, forms, fees, law is sorted. But people are bags of chemicals. So, the challenge is in the people part of it, not in the technology and law part of it. But I think I can safely say that I have learned a lot from my clients as well in the last 10 years that I have been on my own. And it's been a good ride.
So you have been instrumental in bringing Goa in IP world from starting with people getting aware and then making sure that they get the services which they need in their own vicinity, I would say, because obviously, as you said, it must have been an issue going back and forth to Mumbai and getting all the things done. So, as you said, that it is the people who have this chemistry which you have to take care of. Has that prompted you to do PhD in finance with a focus on valuation of patents? And when you started it, by far till now, I assume you're about to complete or already have completed your PhD. What was your experience? How has your thought process or maybe understanding of the same valuation process has changed over time while you were doing PhD?
So valuation is a very fascinating subject. Of course, it is numbers, but those numbers, depending on the story, you can change the numbers, and depending on the numbers, you can change the story. And I always thought that IP valuation would be from the law fraternity. I would get my PhD in law. That was always my thought. The PhD in physics did not work out, so I thought, okay, PhD in law will work out. And I went to give a talk somewhere on basics of IP in the management school, Goa Business School. And now who is my advisor? Then he was the person who had invited me to talk. Again, I used to talk about this Ocean Tomo thing to everyone I met. He used to think something like this, we should work on something like this, we should work on something like this. And I told him, and he said, why don't you make this your PhD topic? And I said, yeah, but it'll be PhD in law. He said, no, this should be PhD in finance. And I don't know if you have met Professor Mitra from IIT. He was practically running the department the first year and a half. Since I was the first batch, he was our mentor. He was the department. And he had told us one thing. He had said, to be an effective IP practitioner, you need three legs. One is technology, one is law, both of which you all have, and the third is management. You have to have a degree in management. And when my advisor said, come do a PhD in finance, it was like, okay, the third thing just fell into place. And before I did my PhD, I'm already a certified patent valuation analyst from the US. But I still felt like that was not enough. That barely scratched the surface, that whatever study material I had got and the exams, there was a lot to be learned. The language of finance comes with immersing yourself into it. It's like a whole new language, like physics or something. And I'm almost at the end of my PhD, and it's taken me all this time. I'm still not proficient in it, but I'm better. I speak it better than I did when I started. So to answer your question, what I have learned is that the numbers don't lie. And so if you learn to look at the numbers and you learn to understand what language the numbers are speaking, then you can bring that to patents and you can bring that to any field.
That brings back one of my memory as well. Like it was told to you that technology, law, and then management is required. Similarly, it was for me. It was first engineering, then management, and then law. And I was told that you have the best combination of doing something in intellectual property. And I guess that was the reason. But let us think as lawyers right now. And I would like to ask you a question about being a first generation lawyer. What kind of struggles do you see? And what kind of suggestions do you have for those who are thinking or planning on entering this particular field, especially? Because when you are not having technical background, usually you're not allowed to give patent agent exam and all those things. But there are people who are very much interested and have technical background also, but they are first generation lawyers and they are very scared that will not be that welcome. What is your suggestion to them? How should they look forward to planning this career roadmap for themselves?
See, I don't understand the concept of first generation anything. Someone has to be the first. And I think it would be worse if you were in the shadow of someone, because then you have to, that person has already made a name for themselves, and then you have to work doubly hard, and you may live up to it or you may not live up to it. So I think the pressure on being a family of lawyers is going to be more stressful than for someone like me. I had it easy. I don't think that being a first generation anything should deter you from trying out something new. Honestly, I'm a first generation everything in my family. No, actually, a lot of my uncles have done a BSc physics and an LLB degree, but they haven't practiced either of the disciplines. So that way, I haven't done anything different. But of course, my career path has been off the beaten track from the rest of the family. Anyway, I haven't done anything in a serial order, be it education or marriage or PhD or raising kids, whatever it is. There's like no cut path. So in that sense, I'm the first generation everything and first generation nothing in my family. So I don't think that should deter anyone from trying out anything new. Just go for it.
That's an amazing answer, that there is nothing like first generation. You are up free and you can decide for your own self. That's absolutely motivating. So, moving ahead with that, if it's okay with you, would you like to provide some examples of any kind of success stories related to your platform which has facilitated monetizing patents for the owners, and what kind of services do you provide which benefits them in long run? Because what I have understood till now, that valuation is one of the most important parts of any financial game, or let's say patents. So how have you seen these success stories in your career? How has it worked for you? What are your plans for future?
We have done a fair bit of valuations from the platform. And I also have a very cute, I call it cute because I did it myself, a DIY valuation tool where you can just key in certain figures and it gives you the value of your patent. We haven't really conducted a successful transaction for sale or license of patent because, as you can imagine, this is a very new thing in India and we are still in the raising awareness phase. So there's a lot of questions that get asked. From the buyer side, of course, there is no problem. Everyone is ready. From the seller side, each time I have a conversation, it goes one step ahead. So at some point, we're getting close to where it will open up. And I'm getting people warmed up to the idea that instead of reinventing the wheel, you can just acquire a patent and build up a business around it rather than start a business and then have R&D and spend years in R&D and deep tech and so on. Better than that, buy something off the shelf and build something around it. So that is a mindset which we are not yet used to. It's a little difficult, right? Because you feel like I do my R&D, I file my patent, and then I monetize it. But to change your thinking to this way that, hey, I could just buy something and build a business out of it is something that is new. And we are working on educating people about that.
But I'm sure you'll be very successful in doing that, because you raised awareness for patents and now you have successfully represented so many clients. So that is going to happen. Yes, it will take some time, but what doesn't take time? So, in this context only, about awareness workshops and other online, offline projects which you keep on doing for making people aware about first patents, then why you need valuation of patents. While you are doing that particular thing, how do you use your own platform in raising that awareness, or do you do it in collaboration? I am asking this question in order to understand, are you doing it only nationally or doing it internationally also?
So the beauty of social media is there are no boundaries. So there is no question of national or international. There are people from all over the world who want to have a dialogue, who want to understand what it is. So we have done valuation for people from other countries. We have talked about licensing, sale of patents, and even building businesses around it. So conversations are happening across the globe without barriers.
So you have gotten more response on international platform, or was it national, which has given you more motivation to get into this valuation business?
Valuation, see, whether there is Indian clients, foreign clients, it doesn't matter. Valuation is something right now that I'm enjoying so much that even if there are no clients, I'm just valuing things. There's a screen behind this screen and there are valuation figures. That's why I'm smiling looking at it. So right now, the people who are following my content, they are more keen because they are young. They are keen to learn about the basics of IP and something that has been simplified to such an extent where I do posts, where I do videos in English as well as in formal English. And so it makes it easier for people to understand and reach out and say, can you do a follow-up video on this? Can you do a follow-up video on that? Whereas the business owners and the entrepreneurs and the founders, they are more interested in patented network as a business model to see if something like that could be commoditized, to see if there could be a secondary market for patents. And if so, how would regulation in that secondary market work? So there are different conversations happening at different levels. And the good thing is there are equal number of people in both the camps. The ones who want to understand the basics and the ones who want to understand the business model. So it's a fun ride.
So how do you strategize that kind of intriguing conversation with individuals as well as businesses? What kind of explanations, or let's say what kind of considerations do you have while you are strategizing their IP strategies or their IP needs? Because obviously businesses will have different needs, individuals will have different.
Yeah.
So how do you explain them their own strategy to follow?
I think the rule of thumb is the same regardless of whether you're a business, a large company, or an individual inventor, or an individual IP holder, or a solopreneur. We need to identify all the IP, all the possible sources of IP. Forget IP. First, we need to find out the sources, see what is our plan. What is the plan for growth? What are you planning to do with this? So let's say you come to me saying you want to file a patent. What do you want to do with it? What direction is your business headed? And then we kind of structure out, we keep our ducks out in a row and kind of have a pipeline for events. So everything does not have to happen at the same time, because as you're aware, IP can be quite taxing on your wallet. So we have a phase wise thing that we say, okay, first this has to go out, then that. For example, a client came to us in a space that is very much in demand. And so he said, what do we do with this? We have all of this potential IP. So I said, okay, first things, we'll go with design, followed by patents. Trademarks have already been done in the past, so we are going to just keep that going. And any new trademarks that are associated with these designs, we'll roll them out. There is a sequence of things, so we'll push it out one by one. And that strategy can, of course, it's not written in stone, it's written in sand. So we can always go back and revisit it, because market is changing. With the market changing, the client's requirements change. With the client's requirement changing, we can't afford to have anything set in stone. So we do customize it as we go along. Nothing great, but we will still move things around here and there, the order of events and so on. But it's a very good question about strategy, because we tend to view IP, any one IP, in isolation. We think patents, 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 right? But a patent by itself is like I don't know if you saw my video this morning, it's like the hamburger filling, just the filling. What are you going to do without the bread, the upper and lower layer of bread, right? So you need it to be protected by trademarks, you need it to be protected by designs. If you have source code, then put in the source of copyright as well. And that's going to make it flavorful. That is going to make it protected from all sides. You can't just have a fence in the front of your house and the backyard and sides open. So strategy is important. And while the general principle remains the same, it still has to be customized depending on where you are starting from and what direction you're headed in.
Wow. So patents is not in totality the whole strategy, but yes, you make the whole strategy like a hamburger. Of course, it's an amazing analogy and the way you explained it. Keeping in mind your busy schedule, the way you are busy with your career, busy with your PhD, family, everything, how do you take care of, let's not say stress directly, but maybe the challenge of being the best person, being the best mentor, best mother, best everything, I would say. How do you manage to do that? What motivates you? And please share some details so that we can also get motivated equally.
I don't know if I'm the best anything. I think you have the wrong person on your show. I'll have to ask my children if I really am the best mother. But here's the thing, I just have to show up every day and do the best I can. Some days it is 10%, some days it is 90%. The good thing is my work, PhD, all of that is like one giant ball of yarn. I can't distinguish it because it's all IP. And so it's all fun. So I don't have to shut down one window in my browser to say, okay, that was work, and open up another window saying that's PhD. Because my PhD window is also analyzing patents and my work is also drafting patents. So I don't have to shift gears. With parenting, of course, I have a teenager and a almost teenager now. Next week, he'll be a teenager. So I'm swimming in a sea of hormones. But, if you let them know that you are learning. So I had told my kids that every day that you show up, it is my first day of being a parent to a child that age. So if today you're 16, it's the first time I've ever been a parent to a child who's 16. So I don't know anything about it. So you have to be patient with me as I'm being patient with you. And now, of course, they're taller than me. So it's like, it's a different conversation, but it is fun. It's a lot of fun because I'm a helicopter mom. I know. I shouldn't be. I should give them space. But I feel like another 2 years, and then my older son is going to be out of the house. Another 2.5 years. And so that's my justification that I'm going to be a helicopter mom for as long as I can, because then I don't get to be around you. So it's not stressful. I enjoy parenting. I enjoy being with family, and I don't have a social life outside of this. It's my work, my PhD, and my family. So it's good. It's good. I'm blessed with lovely people around me. And my mother-in-law, I cannot have a conversation without bringing her in, because she's my rock. She is my support, and I can undertake whatever I want to do on earth because I know she has my back.
Wow. The way you have praised her, it's absolute wow. So, giving that, how do you find time for your marathons? And especially why I asked you about it, because you do it with your sons. Another question in addition to that, how do you build connections? Is it through only workshops, or do you have it through your marathons or your older connections? Because obviously, for a lawyer or for any professional for that matter, we need to have connections.
I started running exactly 12 years ago. And I used to run when my younger son was 1 year old. I started running, and I used to run when they were young. I used to do longer distances. Then, as they grew older, I kind of had lesser time for myself. Then they started running slowly, slowly. Somewhere they started doing 3 kilometers, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers, and now they're doing 10 kilometers. So they show up, at least one of them shows up for every event with me. And I don't network at these events. Honestly, I am a very, very introverted person, and I don't have a social life. I'll tell you, I have been to 8 weddings in the last 20 years, including my own. So I don't attend weddings. I don't attend any kind of social gathering. So when I go to a marathon, I am focused on my run. I finish my run, I hang out, click a few pictures, and I come back home. So not for networking at all. And when I moved to Goa, I had to, of course, interact with a lot of college people and educational institutions, government institutions, and so on. But that was for work, so that's okay. And lately, all my connections, my networking has been inbound. People have been reaching out to me through LinkedIn, or from the few people that I follow and post comments on from those comment sites. So it has been all inbound in the last 2 years.
What would you suggest the new entrants who are getting into this particular fascinating field of IT, especially? What should they look forward to? How should they prepare themselves for this kind of conversations, the kind of reach they will have to make, and the kind of work which they are getting into? How should they prepare themselves?
I would say start with reading, reading, reading. I think the new generation, everything is made so easily digestible in small chunks that the concentration span to sit and read something long form is not there. So I think I would say start with that, because what we miss out in experiences, we can learn from reading others' experiences. Of course, case laws help, but it doesn't always have to be case laws. There are wonderful books written on IP in a story form, such as Rembrandt's in the Attic. There are people's master's thesis, PhD thesis. You don't have to read the whole thing, even if you can read one portion of it in any order, it doesn't matter. Just read research papers. There is a lot of IP oriented research that is being done, which has practical, you may think, why academia? But they study it in a practical context, and there are managerial implications. So you should read about what impacts IP, how IP impacts other things that, if especially if you're a manager and IP practitioner together, then how either IP and the things that you're selling, goods or services, how they impact each other. All that, research will simplify those things out for you. And there is no dearth of information. You just have to know where to find it. We are living in this age. Do you remember? I don't know, you're probably a few years younger than I am. But if you had to go to read any book in the library, you had to go make a request with a librarian. Then a week later, he will call you. Then you go back and check. Then you have to go to some dusty corner of the library, pull out the thing, find out the card which someone has misplaced. Then you fill it out. Today's kids, if you tell them to do all that, they will say, I don't want to read, because they just go type something and then they can get pirated books or music or whatever. So when information is available so freely, I say make use of it. And as an IP lawyer specifically, I know I'm going on, but as an IP lawyer specifically, there are no boundaries for you. If you were, say, a criminal lawyer, then you only have to read your IPC and CRPC and a bit about human psychology, maybe. Or if you are, bail section and so on. If you are a contracts lawyer, then you need your contract on your fingertips, and negotiation and drafting has to be ace. But in IP is real world. There is IP in jelly beans, there is IP in Rubik's Cube, there is IP in your smartphone, anything, right? Look behind you, I see a sea of IP. There are books, there are pens, there are little placards saying Vakil Sahiba, which I really like, by the way. There's IP in everything. So I don't think we can afford to be horse and blinders and say, I'm only going to read IP Copyright Act or only Trademark Act. No, you have to look around you and find IP in everything and then read up about that.
Read it like a story and you will not get bored.
Yes.
Like you enjoy your life, your family, and your PhD all together, because it's all about IP and the way you have built it for yourself. So we are again thankful to you for agreeing to catch up with us and tell us more about how you have built your network and patented network for that matter. That's an amazing platform, and I would urge everyone to have a look at it and understand how it has worked for her and how you can learn from whatever she has shared today. Thank you so much, Shalini ma'am, for being here. And it has been a humbling experience for me. And to understand how IP works, is there is a sea, or rather ocean. We just have to jump in and understand how it works.
Thank you for having me on the show, Divya. I appreciate it.